I'm just going to say, I wish you were at 9 o'clock today, because Randy Mosteller, our executive pastor, is the pastor that we're going to honor this month. We're only doing one pastor a year. This year, Randy Mosteller. Randy, give him a round of applause. So I told him he had to come and do an announcement about the survey that we did. And so he walks out, and then I came out and I interrupted him. Randy is so hard to surprise. It's amazing. And so I came out, and here's what I said. Randy's been on staff at CCC since June of 2012. His role has changed over the years. He's the pastor that runs our finances, that oversees our staff, and he works more hours than a human should ever do, right? He never stops working, ever. He's here all the time, all day, every day. That's who Randy is. Now, the cool thing about Randy is when you have him on staff, he can fix just about anything. All right? Now, you would have no idea on yeah, you can give him a round of applause for that. On a typical Sunday morning, before you walk into this place, we have screens go down, video cameras not working, plug-ins that aren't working, wires that have been pulled or unplugged, or things that have died. Randy can fix any of that. And he usually does every weekend, right? He's like the Swiss Army knife of pastors, is what he is. He's a great friend. He's a great leader. And we at Community are blessed to have him on staff. Now, if yeah, give him another round of applause. Just because he hates this so much. I mean, I love putting him in the middle of this. Again, 9 o'clock, his face was like, what are you doing? Stop. Get me off the stage. Now, trying to surprise Randy is really difficult. And so to be able to get him on 9 o'clock was so cool. But there's only two things that Randy's really passionate about. The first thing is his new Ford Bronco First Edition model that he drives, which is a beautiful car. And the second thing is barbecue. He's great at barbecuing stuff, right? So we went the barbecue route. We found out that he loves Myron Mixon. He's a 5-time world champion barbecue guy. He's on all the barbecue TV shows. He's crusty. He's kind of in your face on everything. He's Randy's kind of guy. I mean, he just is. Well, Randy, again, to celebrate you, here's what we've done. We've gotten you a 3-day Myron Mixon barbecue cooking school at Myron's personal house in Georgia. All right, so here's the letter from Myron. My barbecue cooking school is hands-on, taught by me, Myron Mixon. We will cover whole hog, pork ribs, beef tri-tip, pork loin, chicken, turkey, pork butts, and beef brisket. Now, that's a whole lot to cover in 3 days, right? So the only catch is he has to come back and cook for all of us. So. Give him a round of applause. Love you, brother.
Thank you.
He was so mad at me in between services. I love it. Well, we've been talking about questions that a lot of us have when it comes to our faith, and questions that our friends have when it comes to their faith. And today's question is one of the most basic questions, but everybody seems to have this same one. And it's this: why do bad things happen? I mean, if God is a good God, then why do bad things happen? Why does God sometimes do miracles and sometimes doesn't? Just bad things happen. I was in Florida a few weeks ago in between Hurricane Helene and Milton, and I drove down the coast, and I saw the devastation that it caused. There were, if we can show those pictures, there were 8-foot-high walls of furniture, mattresses, dressers, chairs, when Hurricane Helene came in, it actually covered to the top some of these hotels, completely submerged them with that tide that came in, and it was devastation. I mean, it really, really was. And it was not just devastation there on the coastline, but it was also devastation from the over 40 trillion gallons of water that Hurricane Helene dropped. North Carolina, Tennessee, all the way up through to even here in Cincinnati. And you see the storms that we had and the effects of that. My wife used to always talk about being a kid and going to this place called Chimney Rock and how much she loved it. It was like the getaway vacation day for them. And Chimney Rock before was a beautiful mountain town. And after this thing, it was just wiped off the face of the map. I mean, you see this little amusement park and just a little kind of a getaway kind of place, and it's gone. Did you see the videos that were happening after Hurricane Helene? You see the houses floating down what used to be an interstate because the interstate was completely wiped out. You see all the rain and the devastation and the damage that was done by that hurricane. And then I'm in Florida, and it said, well, there's another hurricane getting ready to make its way in and come back after that, and you see Hurricane Milton and how powerful that hurricane was. And did you see the picture of the tornadoes that Hurricane Milton spawned? 2 tornadoes, there's a third one getting ready to form just to the left of those. And you're going, that is just unbelievable devastation that's getting ready to take place right there, you know? Just devastation. And you think about the hundreds of thousands of people whose lives were turned upside down in those few short weeks. I mean, some of them lost everything. Some of them lost living arrangements. Some of their businesses were destroyed. Their lives are just absolutely turned upside down. Some entire towns are gone. How do you deal with that? Do you relate to that? Do you relate to the news that talks about all the diseases that are out and the job losses that are going on and the health scares people are dealing with currently? Do you relate to that? Maybe for you, these past few years have been tough. I mean, maybe some bad things have happened, right? Maybe your entire life has been tough. And I'm no different than any of you all are. I mean, my life has been tough since I was little, right? I'm no different than you all. I mean, some of your lives have been so much worse than anything that I've ever faced. I'll give you a rundown of basically a real quick overview of my life. When I was 8 years old, we were on vacation, and I just kept peeing like everywhere. I couldn't control it. My dad was getting so mad at me. Finally, we left vacation early, went home, and by the time we got home, I was almost comatose. And so they took me to the local hospital, and they immediately flew me to Pittsburgh Children's, where I was diagnosed as a type 1 diabetic, and they said a few hours more and I wouldn't have survived. That's how bad I was. But that wasn't the worst part of being a diabetic at 8 years old. The worst part was having to learn how to give yourself shots a couple times a day. The worst part was having to pay attention to what I was eating and how I was eating and why my blood sugars would go low and how dangerous that was for me at 8 years old. At 10 years old, I was walking home from school and I got hit by a truck. And you're going, well, that explains a lot. And actually it does, you know. I broke my leg, the truck hit me, I flew up over the hood of the truck and over onto the road. And it was a story for another time. I was saved by a mass murderer at that point who pulled me off of the road. Broke some ribs, my cheekbone was shattered. I had some really bad head injuries. My whole face was like one scab after that. At 14, my appendix burst and was able to get to the hospital. I spent 3 months in the hospital over the summer of my 14th birthday. And I had a total, I know this because I counted just to be able to kind of focus on something, a total of 72 IVs. Because I was so sick, the IVs wouldn't stay in, and it's before they would do a port to keep the line permanently in you. And I still have PTSD about IVs today. I was in a motorcycle wreck when I was in high school. I had a ladder collapse on me, and this part of my elbow was sticking out here because my arm got caught in between the ladder, and then I landed on top of the ladder, and that's kind of what happened there. I've had countless eye surgeries for retinopathy. I've had surgeries for hernias and broken bones. I got a staph infection after one of my surgeries, and the year after that, one of my sons had a brain tumor. 2 years ago, I had a stroke, and then this year, triple bypass surgery. Now, that may not be anything to some of you, because some of your lives have been so much more difficult than that, right? And I get that. My life has just been a list of being in and out of difficult, life-altering situations. There have been times where I just wanted to step back and say, God, why are all these bad things happening to me? Why me? Why now? Why this? And whenever I got into the middle of those types of moments, God kind of always brought me back around, going, I'm not done with you yet. What are you complaining about? It's nothing. They're small needles. Deal with it. I mean, it was those kinds of things that God just kept pouring into my head and just kind of kept me through going, I've got a plan for your life. I'm not done with you that these things have a purpose in your life. Philip Yancey says this, every time we ask the question, why, we're basically asking three questions. We're asking, God, are you there? God, do you care? And God, can you do anything about it? That's powerful. God, are you there? God, do you care? And God, can you do anything about this situation? But here's the deal. And I want you to hold on to this today because you need to know this. If you're in the middle of some deep pain, all the right answers may not make a difference to you. Right? If you're in the middle of a situation where you're going, God, why me? I don't understand this. This is horrible. Nothing that we may say is going to make a difference for you. It may not. And listen, if you're in the middle of one of those deep, dark, desperate, pain-filled situations in your life, I'm not going to pretend that it's going to be easy to get through because it's not. These dark valleys are not easy to walk through. That's why they're dark valleys. That's why they cause pain in your life. I'm not going to pretend that it's going to be easy to get through. And I'm not just going to throw out some answers that, even though these answers might be right, I know these answers may not be something that you can hold on to right now because life may be too tough for that at this moment. I just want you to know that we care about you. And I'm serious about that. We care about you. I want you to know that we're here for you. I want you to know that we love you. And I want you to know that even when God doesn't seem there for you, He's still there with you. And He cares. He cares. You're going to make it through whatever it is that you're going through. Even though you think you may not, you're going to make it through that. But sometimes you need to know that all the right knowledge is not going to get you through it. Sometimes the only thing you have to hold on to is the Holy Spirit inside of you comforting your soul. That's all you've got. And friends, let me tell you this, that's all you need. Because He's the one that will get you through those dark moments. Even when Jesus was on the cross, He had one of those dark moments. Matthew 27:46. About 3 p.m, Jesus cried out in a loud voice, Eli, Eli, lama sabachthani, which means, my God, why have you forsaken me? Jesus is crying that out. God, why'd you leave me? Why am I here? Why is this happening to me? So let's make sure that we don't pretend that bad things aren't going to come your way, right? I don't care what kind of a Christ follower you are. I don't care how deep your faith is. Bad things are going to come at you. Because chances are Bad things are coming at everyone that you know. That's the world that we live in. If you have your Bibles, I know you want to get up and walk out right now, don't you? Well, why did I come here today then? Open your Bibles to John chapter 11. This is where we're going to spend most of our time this morning, kind of walking through this. And we're going to be talking about this guy named Lazarus. Lazarus. John 11:1. A man named Lazarus was sick. He was from Bethany, the village of Mary and her sister Martha. Lazarus' sisters send a message to Jesus. He's about a day away from their village. And they send this message to Jesus that Lazarus is sick, and I mean really sick. And this is a big deal because these are some of Jesus' closest friends, right? They're not casual acquaintances. These are close friends. They were a wealthy family. They had a spare room where Jesus would stay when he was in that area. And I'm sure that Mary and Martha are thinking, well, if Jesus is going to do a miracle, it's going to be now. It's going to be for Lazarus. I mean, we're friends. You know, Jesus and Lazarus are buddies. They're tight. So no question Jesus is going to show up. It's like us praying. God, you know, I've shown up to church every Sunday for how many years, and God, I do my devotions, and I'm in a discipleship relationship, and God, because of that, I'm asking you to help my wife. I'm asking you to be with my kid through this surgery, whatever, heal my son, whatever it might be, right? John 11:1-4. It says, now a man named Lazarus was sick. He's from Bethany, the village of Mary, her sister Martha. When he heard this, Jesus said, this sickness will not end in death. No, it's for God's glory, so that God's Son may be glorified through it. I read that verse and I'm thinking, okay, if the sickness is not going to end in death, then Jesus is going to make a beeline, a fast pace for Bethany and take care of his buddy Lazarus, right? Lazarus isn't going to die. That's what Jesus said. So he's going to kind of change course and head to Bethany and healing. John 11:6-7. So when Jesus heard that Lazarus was sick, he stayed where he was 2 more days. And then he said to his disciples, let's go back to Judea. Stayed where he was 2 more days. Why? Why would he do that? We're going to learn that in just a little bit here. Lazarus was dead. He was buried for 4 days. Why? I think it's so that no one could question the fact that Lazarus was actually dead. Anybody remember Dallas, the TV show from the 70s, 80s? Remember when JR supposedly died? It's one of my favorite TV shows. It was a dream. He wasn't dead. He wasn't going to lose his money. He wasn't going to lose his... It was a dream. Watch The Walking Dead. You know, it's all a dream. None of it's happening. But that's not what was going on here. He's going, hey, listen, just to prove that that he's really, really dead, right? 4 days in the grave. That's long enough before embalming techniques to go, yeah, probably not good to open that tomb. You know, probably not going to be a great smell at that point in time. You know, probably not good things. But if he's been there for 4 days, there's no question that he's dead. John 11:14. So then he told his disciples plainly, Lazarus is dead. And for your sake, I'm glad I was not there, so that you may believe. But let's go to him. And on his arrival, Jesus found that Lazarus had been in the tomb for 4 days. Again, really, really dead. Then Martha heard that Jesus was coming, and she went out to meet him. But Mary stayed at home. Lord, Martha said to Jesus, if you had been here, my brother would not have died. Jesus, why did you stay where you were for a few extra days? If you had been here, he would not have died. Let's hit pause on the story for just a minute. Why do bad things happen? Why did Lazarus die? Why did you get that disease? Why did this job loss happen to your family? Why did the hurricane hit your family? Why do bad things happen? Well, I'll give you a few reasons. All right? First of all, why do bad things happen? Sometimes it's our bad choices. You know that, right? Our bad choices. If you drive drunk and you hit a pole, don't blame God. Don't. It's not God's fault. You chose to drink. You chose to drive. You chose the outcome of your own circumstance. That's your choice, and it was a bad one. If you're a Bengals fan, don't blame God. He's giving you the Steelers. I'm just saying. There are consequences to our behavior. You know, if you sleep around, chances are you're probably going to get some type of a disease. It's just the way it goes. If you smoke all of your life, don't be surprised when your lungs are shot. You know, that's the consequences of smoking. If you drink too much, your liver's probably going to have some issues later on in life, right? I mean, that's the consequence of drinking. If you spend more than you take in and get in debt over your head, maybe you lose your house, maybe you lose your car, maybe you lose your family. Those are consequences of our actions. Nobody's fault but yours. Period. Well, why else do bad things happen? Well, sometimes it's other people's bad choices. If someone is texting and driving and they hit you, that's not God's fault. That's not your fault. That's their fault. It's a choice that someone else made that impacted your life. You can say, why didn't God stop that? I don't know, but He didn't cause it. And a lot of times we want to put that blame on God. It was a choice that someone else made, again, that changed your life. Cliff Netchell used to speak to college campuses around the country, and he writes about an encounter that he had of this young man in the University of North Carolina, and he was protesting during one of his speeches. He says, okay, where's God in Ethiopia? Does He not hear the screams of babies as they starve to death? You tell me, why has God done this? And Cliff responded, how can you blame God for starving babies in Ethiopia when the best-selling books in the United States are on weight loss? Man, that's just so good. It's not God's fault that people are starving today. The earth produces enough food right now to give every person 3,000 calories a day. The problem is that some of us hoard for ourselves so that others go to bed starving. It's a cop-out to blame God for human irresponsibility. If a person gets drunk and drives his car across the median and sends your friend to an early grave, do you blame God? Do you blame God for Hitler's 7 million murders? The vast majority of human suffering is a direct result of human irresponsibility. The truth is, life is not fair. The truth is, we live in a toxic world where we get diseases and things happen to us, and some of what I get I deserve, and some of what I get just happens. There's a lot of truth in that writing from Netchell. Now, another reason bad things happen is satanic attack. And I know in our current culture, that one's not accepted very easily. It's like, yeah, right, Satan's a figure in your imagination. But listen to what John 10:10 says. It says, the thief comes only to steal, kill, and destroy. But I've come that they may have life and have it to the fullest. What does that mean? It means that Satan has come to steal, kill, and destroy. Pretty basic, right? I mean, it just means what it says. He's come to kill, steal, and destroy. That's his whole purpose. So why don't we blame Satan when we see tragedies and when we feel the pain and feel the suffering instead of blaming God? Why? Because we like to blame God. Because God's supposed to be a good God. God's supposed to love us. I mean, if Satan is real, he's here to kill, steal, and destroy. So that's just what he does. All through the Bible, you see Satan causing pain and stuff and suffering. If you want to read an interesting book, go to the Old Testament and read through the book of Job. You want to talk about somebody that had the right to question why the bad things happen. I mean, Job, his life was good. Job had everything that he could ever want. He was righteous, and he was wealthy. He had it all. And in just a very short time, he lost his wealth. It was all gone. He lost his kids. They were all killed. He lost his health. Why? Because Satan attacked him. And yeah, when you read the story, you see that God allowed that to happen. And I don't know why God allowed it to happen, but God didn't cause it to happen. It was a satanic attack. Now, a huge part of all of this, why the bad things happen, is because we just live in a fallen world, right? I mean, that's just the truth. Philip Yancey says, don't confuse life with God. And yet we try to do that all the time. We try to use our rationale to explain things away. Andy Stanley said it's like rust. You don't ever see rust by itself. Rust is the decay that happens to something good. If it weren't for the good things, there wouldn't be any rust. If it weren't for the pure things, there wouldn't be any impure things. And evil is decay that happens from things that are good and pure. So when God created the world, what did he say? It is good. That's what he said. And then he created Adam and Eve, and what did he say? It's very good. But Adam and Eve didn't know what not good was. All they knew was good. They didn't know any bad, any evil. So God put one tree in the middle of the garden that was off limits. It was the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. And God said, I want to have a relationship with you. And the only way to have a relationship with you is if you have the freedom to choose a relationship with me, right? You have to be able to choose that, to choose to love. And the only way for me to do that is to put something in here that you can't use, you can't choose, you can't touch. And if you choose to do that, then you're choosing that over me. It's free will. It's love me or disobey me, right? Free will. God had to put that in so we would know that you love him. I think I told you about a month ago, a little over a month ago, our 10-year-old giant schnauzer, Marcy, 100-pound giant schnauzer, who was my dog, she had cancer and we had to put her to sleep. One of the most painful experiences in the past several years for me was doing that. And then yesterday, our 18-year-old Yorkie, we had to put her to sleep as well. And that was so painful. I mean, so hard. And I kept saying after Marcy, no more. Can't handle this. Can't do this again. Too much pain involved in loving something like that. Lily dies. I'm going, no more. No more. Well, don't laugh. Well, meet our new dog, Ellie. She's a 10-month-old giant schnauzer that weighs 70 pounds. And she has more energy than 3 NFL linebackers. She is just unbelievably, so much energy, right? And so Ellie has a choice whether she wants to love us or not. And she has a choice whether she wants to obey us or not. I tell you, Ellie's 10 months old, 70 pounds. Her head is even with our countertops. All right? So Ellie is trying to figure out to obey or not to obey. Do I counter-surf? Do I not counter-surf? There's some Tums laying on the floor for me getting Ellie, and I'm having to take these things to keep my stomach in order. There's all kinds of stuff. There's a loaf of bread back by the oven. Look at the next picture. completely torn open and half-eaten loaf of bread. She got to choose, and she chose wrong. So we just got done with a week of obedience classes. But I mean, it's her choice, right? I mean, for us, we don't have to convince anybody that hurricanes are bad, right? We just don't. We know that. We don't have to convince anyone that slavery is horrific. We don't have to convince anyone that terrorism and abuse are evil. We know good from evil. Romans 5 says this: when Adam sinned, sin entered the world. Adam's sin brought death, so death spread to everyone, for everyone sinned. Why is there heartache and suffering in this world? Because this world is fallen. We've all sinned. All of us. Every person in this room, every person that's ever existed, every person that will ever exist, we have sinned. John 16 says this: I have told you all this so that you may have peace in me. Here on earth you will have many trials and sorrows, but take heart, because I have overcome the world. Overcome the world. That's a lot of hope right there, guys. But Martha doesn't quite believe it. Martha, back to the story of Lazarus, isn't quite sure what's happening. Martha and Mary are wondering, Jesus, if you were really our friends and if you were really God, wouldn't you have come and healed Lazarus before he died? Jesus, why are you even here? I believe that you could heal him and you didn't heal him. Why are you here? Why? Why did you come now? Why didn't you come sooner? Why didn't you show up to stop the pain and the suffering and everything that's happening right now? Why didn't you do that? John 11:41 says this. Got to remember, they're standing around this tomb. Actually, the whole town is there. They took away the stone. Remember, he's been in there for 4 days. They took away the stone. Jesus looked up and said, Father, I thank you that you have heard me. I know that you always hear me, but I said this for the benefit of the people standing here, that they may believe that you sent me. Something good happening out of something bad. You do realize that's there in every moment, right? Something good happening in something bad. Jesus called out in a loud voice, Lazarus, come out. And the dead man came out. The dead man came out. The thing that they thought would not happen, that Mary and Martha were so upset about, Jesus, why didn't you come and heal him? And Jesus said, I've got this. Don't you believe in me? I've got this. The dead man came out, his hands and feet wrapped with strips of linen and a cloth around his face. And Jesus said to them, take off the grave clothes and let him go. Can you imagine that moment? Can you see Mary and Martha just crying and thanking Jesus for bringing their brother back? Can you imagine being in that moment? I've been in a lot of moments similar to that. I've seen a lot of people through their tragedies and seen God do some pretty incredible miracles. But what happens if he doesn't? What happens if Lazarus stays dead in that grave? What happens if the cancer doesn't leave your body, but it spreads? What happens if your spouse dies? What happens if something bad goes on in your life and you lose your job, you get divorced, your house is repossessed? What happens then? Then you hold on to what Jesus said. John 11:25. Jesus said to her, I am the resurrection and the life. The one who believes in me will live even though they die, and whoever lives by believing me will never die. Never die. We get so wrapped up in the fact that this life is all that there is. And we miss the fact that this life is only a small part of eternity. Small. This life is not all there is. When this life is over, guess what? You're just getting ready to live the best part of it. When this life is over, when this physical body dies, when all the struggles, all the surgeries, the heartaches, when all that dies, when all that goes away, you're just about ready to begin living, because eternity is a long time. And God's promise to us, if you're a believer in Jesus, is that eternity is spent with Him, living a life you can only imagine. We have some descriptions in the book of Revelation, but it's nothing compared to what it actually is. Father God, I pray for everyone in this room. God, I know there's a lot of pain in here. And I know there's a lot of heartache in this room right now. God, I know jobs have been lost, loved ones have passed. I know our lives are not always easy on this earth. But God, you have a plan for us. And there's a purpose in our pain. God, I'm just praying that we can see that and find you to get us through. And it's in Jesus' name.